My coverage of CES 2025 is brought to you by Gigabyte, Lexar, MSI, and Thermaltake. What's up, guys? I'm here at Cooler Master. We're over at the Palms, and they have the new Master Frame case. They have an actual cooler that they made for the RTX 5090 we're going to take a look at, and the NR200P Max. Let's go. We're going to start with the Master Frame. This is Cooler Master's featured product, and it actually comes in 3 different varieties. We have the 400, we have the 600, we have the 800. Isn't that a nice simple naming scheme to let you know what size case you're buying? The 400, even though it is a reasonably like ATX size looking case, this is actually designed for micro ATX motherboards, and the reason it's so big is to accommodate the very large GPUs that exist now and that are going to continue to exist as the RTX 50 series becomes more widely available on the market. But I like this display because it gives a good idea of the concept. This is the Master Frame. As you can tell, it is a frame for a case. This one's currently made in all aluminum, or aluminium if you're in the EU and you don't like aluminum pronunciation. But as you can see, they've managed to do some real nice machining here. We have real nice tight connection points at the corners. They said this is still not the final version. They're working on the finish, on the aluminum, to make sure it's real nice and uniform between, say, these cross pieces here and the corner pieces. But inside the frame, you can see we have mounting points pretty much everywhere for a bunch of stuff that might go into that. So with a build like this one over here, they have it set up in a pretty standard ATX layout, but you can see various vertical bars that are supporting the motherboard tray and the other elements inside the case. And that also means that all the panels can pop off to allow you access to the internals, or can pop off to be swapped out for other versions of the panels, which they have a bunch of on display. This top panel, for example, can swap out to one that is a full mesh panel, or you can go with the Cooler Master Hex logo look if you want. Even the front panel I/O up here doesn't necessarily need to be right here. You could swap that to have it on the front of the case. You could swap to have it like at the back over here, depending on where your case is and where would be the most convenient place for your USB ports and all. Here's a look at the black version of the Master Frame. This is the 600, the mid-tier, so this one is going to support full-size ATX motherboards with a slightly larger footprint than the 400, and this one is actually going to be coming out first. Expect this to be on the market and available in the US on April 2nd. The MSRP is going to be $200, and there's still some final details to be determined as far as how it's going to be kitted out by default versus the various panel options and whatnot that you could potentially upgrade or swap to. I also like this side panel that has plenty of ventilation along here for side-mounted radiators or fan intakes, and they said they're having a bit better luck getting all the finish touches done with the black version. It's just a little bit easier to work with than the aluminum, so that's why we're going to have to wait a little bit longer for the aluminum versions and the other sizes. They're looking at possibly May, but that's still TBD. Over here we have a bunch of examples of various side panels, and again, all of these are just held on by magnets. Those magnets can be repositioned for different types of side panels. This one has a bluer finish. I really like some of the wood finishes that they've done on some of these, and of course beyond the wood you could do a wrap. There's just lots of possibilities that you could do with these large panels, and you can go with something that's maybe a little bit more buttoned up, a little more modest if you're doing like a nice professional workspace, or you could even go with something like this. This is like almost a tempered glass. It looks a little bit like privacy or security glass that would let you have a little bit of the light of your system glow through. Even panels like this one that have a little bit of texture on the glass, just a lot of interesting things that can be done, and because they've standardized the size and the layout, it's really easy to swap in alternative panels. Here's another example of some of the wood finishes on here, and then even some subtle details on the finish for the metallic finish. This is more of a, I want to say rose gold, goldish finish, but we have like a cleaner example of that right here versus this one over here where they've done a bit of a brushed metal finish. A really cool example of what they've done with the Master Frame is actually the Cooling X Pro over here, and this is not going to be a system that you can build. This is going to be a pre-built from Cooler Master that they have super customized to wedge a bunch of hardware into the smaller version of the case, while also giving you some unique things like some analog controls here that can control, I'm actually not sure what in your CPU. You could also swap those out to an LCD if you want to get some more heads-up information on like CPU usage and that kind of thing. As you can see over here, this is a water-cooled system. It actually has dual loops for the CPU up here and the GPU right here. This is currently, I think, an RTX 4080 in there, but they also have this block that they made. This is an RTX 5090 block, which is ridiculously heavy for how small it seems, but there's a lot of copper in this thing. So once the 5090 is widely available, you'll be able to get a setup like this in the Cooling X Pro with really high-end components, and it's cool that they've done dual loops down here going down to this bottom reservoir pump unit. And the radiators on this side of the case which is this entire side of the case. That's a large radiator. It can actually do, I think, 9 120 millimeter fans, but the way they have it set up here is four 180 millimeter fans, which we can't really see. But having those larger fans means that the radiator is going to be able to get cooled off, and bigger fans can move more air at lower RPMs, and so they stay quieter, so that's really nice. Moving along to a much smaller case is the NR200P V3 Max. The NR200, I'm told by Cooler Master, is their most popular case ever because it's mini ITX, it's well built, you can fit a huge range of hardware in there, including full-size graphics cards. The new V3 version is expected to come out in Q2. We don't have anything more specific in that. We're giving Cooler Master some wiggle room there for the actual launch date. The price is expected to be a little bit more than the current version of the NR200, but bear in mind that it also comes with a PCIe Gen 5 riser cable for the newer version, and those are more expensive than the Gen 4 cables. It's also going to come with a 1,000 watt power supply now instead of 850 watts, so that's going to be much better support for the higher wattage GPUs, particularly the RTX 5090. And it includes an all-in-one liquid cooler, and it's actually a 280 millimeter AIO up on the top here instead of 240. So we're looking at probably close to $300, maybe a little bit less than that in terms of the MSRP for this case. But again, you're getting not just the case, but the power supply and the AIO as well as that PCI Express Gen 5 riser cable. I also really like that they've added this mesh panel on the side so you can get a really good look at your graphics card. They currently have an Asus ROG Strix RTX 4090 installed there, and if you guys are familiar with that card, it is basically one of the biggest on the market. So if it's going to fit that card, it should fit just about any GPU. That's with asterisk, these new RTX 50 series GPUs that are coming out can be pretty huge. But there's a first look at the NR200P V3, and I know there's going to be a lot of interest in this one. And I asked Cooler Master if they have plans to bring this out in any other finishes, and they said they're not making any promises right now, but they do already have a mock-up that's finished in this sort of white and silver, which is currently being demonstrated by the Encore 100 Air over here, which I covered at Computex. So that's the NR200P V3, and I know small form factor enthusiasts are going to be pretty excited about this one. Next up, we have Cooler Master's RTX 5090s. I'm just kidding. These are Cooler Master RTX 5090 coolers. Actually, to be more specific, they have a 5080 version here, and they have a 5090 version here. These are very big air coolers. You guys might be thinking, wow, compare this to the new Founders Edition that came out, and like many of the add-in board partner cards, we're looking at a pretty chunky cooler. But the benefit of Cooler Master's design is we're actually using standard 120 millimeter fans in here, and the shroud on top actually has a few different heights. So you can remove the screw here, pop off this shroud, and you can swap those fans out. So right now these are some slim fans on this version, but they also have a shroud version that's using standard, I believe, 25 millimeter thickness, 120 millimeter fans. You can see the bottom side of the shroud right there. They have it outfitted with 3 Sickle Flow Edge 120s. So that's just going to give you a variety of options in terms of, do you want fans with LEDs? Do you want fans with like maximum static pressure to give you the maximum cooling performance over this really ridiculous fin stack that they have underneath? I like that we have an exploded view, but I feel like I'm going to break this. So if you're looking at these coolers and thinking like, wow, when I finally get my RTX 5090 or 5080, I definitely want to swap one of these in. The only slight downside for DIY builders is Cooler Master is only going to be able to sell these in complete systems. So Cooler Master pre-built basically might be outfitted with these. We still don't have a release date for when these are going to come out. It's going to be heavily dependent on when NVIDIA gets the RTX 5090 onto the market in mass production. But also, in case you're wondering, these were designed for the Asus ROG Astral, the new version of the RTX 5090 that you might have seen in my Asus video. So it was designed for that PCB, not necessarily for the Founders Edition. Next, let's talk about some Cooler Master coolers. They're bringing back the V8 series, and they actually have a couple different versions here. We're going to start with the V4. This is the V Lite series, so these will be a bit more modestly priced. As you can see, they have what they're calling like an electric vehicle aesthetic on the top, as compared to the V4, V6, and V8 over here that are more of a combustible engine-inspired design. As you can see, it's got a little bit of LED bling going around the outside. We're expecting these to launch in Q1. And in particular, Cooler Master has a new 3D heat pipe design, which they're using in these. They say it's actually more effective for cooling than a vapor chamber at consumer level TDPs, like TDPs down below 400 watts or so, which is a lot more common for a typical desktop CPU. The new 9950X 3D, for example, is a 170 watt TDP. From there, we just step it up. The V6 is a larger version. They have 120 millimeter fans on these. Then we have the V series standard, starting here with the V4 3D HP. As you can see, they're advertising the heat pipes on top. Now, the top here is an aesthetic edition, but you can see they've gone with making your computer look like it's an engine in a car, which actually harkens back to the original V series. And then another feature for these coolers, which also applies to the V6 and the V8 and the V10 up here, is you might notice they have different size fan blades for the intake and the exhaust. So that's going to reduce the amount of harmonic vibrations you might have by two fans running at the same RPMs and the same frequency. Again, just to help keep these coolers operating at maximum efficiency, at least as far as I am told. These aren't available yet, so we're going to need to wait for some independent testing to see how they stack up against the current stock of air coolers on the market. I actually kind of like this design on the top. It's just a unique look for an air cooler for sure. And the way they have the LEDs positioned to sort of shine out over the central part here, I think it looks pretty cool, even though it's just an aesthetic addition. Next up here is a new AIO from Cooler Master, the 360 Atmos 2. And as you can see, 360 millimeter radiator. It's also using their new sickle flow edge fans, which is a single frame for all of the fans, which means when you're installing your fans onto your radiator, you only need to mount it with 4 screws. Yeah, that's convenient. We also have various caps that can go on the CPU block part of this. They're going to be offering what they call a flex kit, where you can purchase an optional cap. So you can go with something more basic like the silver finish or the clear finish, or you can upgrade yourself to, I think this one's my favorite because it is actually an active cooling fan. The fan's spinning in there. You might not be able to see it because it's spinning pretty fast, but this is going to provide some cooling for your VRMs. That's actually kind of important. Also your memory, or at least the memory that's closest to your CPU socket. Or we have a couple different LCD panels. This one is a more traditional one, so you can do pictures, images, or show something practical like your CPU temperatures. Or this one, which is more of an 8-bit design. That's pretty cool. And actually they had this set up with another concept product in one of the other cases, where they had that paired with an LCD strip that went across the fans. And again, that was just a demonstration, but I thought that was pretty cool. Here's those sickle flow edge fans. They're going to be available in white and black. Again, since these all use a single frame, they were able to do a little bit of a unique look with the housing here. It's actually got a gap there, but they've also added RGB to that. And this has a 360 version as well as a 240 version right there. Here's the 360 Core 2. This one's going to be a bit more modestly priced new AIO. As you can see, it has the infinity glass over there on the pump block. This one doesn't use the sickle flow fans, but they do have at least a daisy chainable setup for the fans, so you only have a single plug to route over to your motherboard for the fan power and the RGB lighting. Here's some new fans from Cooler Master. These are the MF120s. These are still in development, and they're finalizing the connection method here. As you can see, this snaps around the outside of the frame, but this actually does have contacts underneath. So that is, again, providing the connection from the single connection point over there across all 3 fans to minimize the amount of cables that you have to plug in. There are various ways that I've seen this implemented with various manufacturers of fans. This is definitely a different one. It protrudes a little bit, but it also has kind of a cool look. So I'm kind of curious in the future what this is going to mean for compatibility with these fans across a variety of cases. But if you guys have any feedback for Cooler Master on these, they're still working on them. We're expecting these to come out around Q3. Then we have the big boy MF120 XT Pro. I guess it's not any bigger, but it is more overbuilt. They're going with a metal frame on this one, which does have, like, I'll say, a pretty serious look to it. This fan is noticeably more sturdy than some others that I've looked with, and because of the metal frame, it can support RPMs up to 4,000 RPM, and they have a demo of that set up, which I turned on, and then I blasted myself in the face for a minute, which is just something you should always do when you visit Las Vegas, I think. Rounding things out with power supplies, well, power supply, we have one right here. So apart from the functional upgrades to these power supplies, the new MWE Gold series, these are the ones that are going to be coming out the soonest. We're looking at Q2 or Q3. But apart from going with an all-aluminum housing, as well as improving the internals for better efficiency rating, Cooler Master was like, you know what? we shouldn't be hiding power supplies behind a shroud. We should make power supplies look sexy. And you know what, Cooler Master? I agree. So here's their first attempt at that. They do have several series of these in development that they're still working on. We saw a slide of that. They are looking pretty cool. This Gold series is going to be a more affordable option, but just by rounding the edges here a bit, giving it a bit of a brushed metal finish, a nice, distinct, but somewhat understated Cooler Master logo, which is appreciated right there. We've got a pretty nice looking power supply, and of course this is also ATX 3.1 compliant, which means it's got a 12V2x6 connector, and that's good for any power supply that comes out in 2025. But guys, that's all the time I have here at the Cooler Master Suite in the Palms in Las Vegas, Nevada. Thank you guys for watching my CES 2025 coverage, and a big thank you to my sponsors for this event, Thermaltake, Lexar, MSI, and Gigabyte. I have more videos coming at you real soon. Hit the thumbs up button, check out the playlist if you want to see all of them. We'll see you all in the next video.